Hello for everybody. I am Bill Stefan, the president of the American Wine Society, and I'm very lucky. We're very lucky to have today with us Lucas Paya, who is the Lustau brand educator and also conducts the wine certification for the Sherry Council in the United States. I have sat through his classes before, and he's very, very knowledgeable and very good. And the thing I love about Sherry is the diversity, as you can just tell right now, if you've poured the wines, you can see the diversity of color from a beautiful white with the Fino all the way to the dark Pedro Ximenez. And I'm probably saying it wrong. And so before I make any more mistakes, I'm going to turn it over to Lucas and let him do all the talking. And hopefully the share screen is working perfectly. Right, Lucas?
I believe it is. Okay. Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you all. Yeah, I mean, I always say the same thing. I always, in a friendly way, challenge people to find an ingredient, a dish, some food that that they like a lot, and that it's not going to be something that goes wonderfully with some sherry, because we have so much to choose from here. There is so many different styles based on not so much the grape variety, because 5 out of the 6 wines today are from the same grape variety, but so many different ways to age the wines, especially then blending, that I always say the same. We could be talking about, and hopefully we'll taste that today, the driest wines in the world, the palest and driest wines in the world, the darkest and sweetest wines in the world, and everything in between. Because as we were mentioning with Bill a few minutes ago, 6 wines is 6 styles, is nothing close to be fair to the region. We should be having maybe another 6 or 10 in front of us to really see how much you can, how big that spectrum is. And again, we could be on one end of the spectrum, on the other end of the wine spectrum, and a lot of different places in between those two points. What you see here is the wines that we selected for the course, and that suggested for today as well, as an introduction and a way to start thinking about food with all the different options. We're not going to be tasting them in this order, so everyone make sure that pay attention to the correct order. The correct order is wine number 1, Manzanilla Papirusa; wine number 2, Fino del Puerto; wine number 3, Fino Jarana; wine number 4, Amontillado Los Arcos; number 5, Oloroso Don Nuño; and number 6, Pedro Ximenez San Emilio. And before I say anything else, make sure you don't taste the Pedro Ximenez until I tell you to do so, because you'll understand when you taste it. But if you taste the Pedro Ximenez now, it's going to ruin pretty much everything else, because that's the other end of the spectrum that I was talking about, right? And it's extremely sweet and syrupy. So you can smell it, look at it, but don't put it in your mouth until we're done with the rest of the wines. That's very important. So what we're going to do actually is we're going to taste the first 3 wines, the white labels, side by side, for a reason that I will explain. We can approach like that as a flight, a first flight with 3 wines. Then we'll transition on to the Amontillado. We can taste that alone, by itself. Then Oloroso, and then the PX. But it's interesting to approach the first 3 wines next to each other, or for the reason that I will explain now. I don't know if you heard that term of the sherry triangle. It's one of the classic characteristics of the region, and it's the figure, as you can see here, that is formed when you unify three very important towns in the region. The triangle is actually gone now. There was a revision of the rules last year, late last year, November, December, and they changed a few important things. One of them is that they got rid of the triangle. The triangle had been there for decades, for centuries, as the triangle or zona de crianza was requiring that any wine to be labeled as sherry had to be aged only in one of the three towns that you see here. But the region has another 7 towns. So it was a historic claim by the other towns that they also wanted to be able to label sherry, not only to produce and age it, but then label it, because again, only wines aged in those 3 towns up until December last year were allowed to be sherry. Now that's gone, but as you can guess, it's not really gone, because the aging facilities, let me say 99% of the aging facilities in the region are still found in one of the 3 major towns. So with the first 3 wines that you have in front of you, we're going to be tasting a Manzanilla from San Lucar, Manzanilla Papirusa here, a town that is highly influenced by the ocean and with a very particular climate. Wine number 2 is Fino from El Puerto, down here, as you can see, also very close to the water, but with slightly different conditions. And wine number 3 is Fino Jarana from Jerez. So, and why are we doing that? Well, Lustau happens to age biological wines in each of the 3 towns. And I can tell you that the base wines that they use to feed the Solera systems in each of the 3 towns is basically the same wine. So what we're going to do today is an exercise to hopefully appreciate the effect of the location on technically the same base wine. After a few years of aging, all 3 wines are pretty much 5 years of average age. What happens to the 3 wines in each of the 3 towns? And then wines 4, 5, and 6, just FYI, are also aged in Jerez. But the exercise with the location will be with the first 3 wines, which are the biological wines. As I said, these are the 3 towns of the former triangle that now is technically gone. And if you take a look at the annual parameters and data, the influence of the ocean, the average humidity, the average temperature, the continentality, difference between day and night, or summer and winter, their distance from the ocean, the influence of the different winds, makes that not all 3 towns really enjoyed exactly the same climatic conditions. And with biological aging, which is the first 3 wines, that happens to have an important effect, because the formation of the floor yeast, and we'll talk about that in a minute, it's not exactly the same, or it doesn't metabolize some of the elements in the wine at the same rate if the humidity is not the same, if the the temperature is a little bit higher in the summer. So all those things can ultimately affect the taste of the wines, because the floor is not exactly the same in each of the 3 towns. Even in some part of the towns, in some neighborhoods, the floor formations could be also different. So now, before we start, as I was saying before, all 5 of the 6 wines, the first 5 wines are from Palomino, the queen of the region. And then wine number 6 is from Pedro Ximenez. But it's not as much as the difference of grape varieties here, is especially the aging method. So, as I said, we're going to start with the first 3. And we call them, and this is what we explained during the course. Session 1 is all theory, and it's about 2 hours. And we tell all the things about the region. And when it comes to aging, we explain the difference between biological aging and oxidative aging, right? Those are the 2 measure methods. The first 3 wines are aged under the floor yeast that probably all of you are familiar with, the way it looks. But what's important here is that to be able to understand why biological sherry is so unique, a lot of people think that the truly are the jewels of the region and the most important contribution to the wall of wine by the region of Jerez, because this doesn't happen at this rate pretty much anywhere else. We all love Jura wines too, but it's not the same, right? To understand why these wines are so unique, it's important to know what the floor yeast does to the wines. So if you take the course and you receive the manual and you start reading about what's happening here, basically biological wines are aged in a 600-liter capacity cask that is only filled to 500 liters. All right. So there is a 100-liter gap on top of the wine, creating a large contact surface. And if you put that wine at around 15% alcohol, remember these are 45 wines, so they add alcohol to them. If you have a wine sitting in any corner of the region at 15%-ish alcohol, they say between 15 and 16, it's the ideal. Or even without any alcohol, a normal base wine with maybe 12% ABV, dry base wine. But let's talk about the sobretablas, which is that base wine when you add about 3 more points of alcohol. So you have now a Palomino base wine at around 15% alcohol. That is the ideal amount of alcohol for the floor yeast, the local magic floor yeast, to appear, to start showing up on the surface of the wine. Okay, so just after a few days, you're going to see those wines in those casks being covered with a layer of floor yeast, as you see here in the picture. Now, why is that very important? Well, because these floor yeast, these little animals are very active. Okay, extremely active. And then you also have the lees, what they call cabezuelas, which are then when the yeast die and fall on the bottom of the barrels, they're also metabolizing elements. So it's like, imagine almost a 360, because a lot of surface contact, but also the bottom, surrounding, active yeast surrounding the wine, transforming the wine over, in this case, about 5 years. All 3 wines, the first 3 wines, the white wines that you see, are about 5 years. What does the floor do to the wine? Well, various things, but listen here. One of the most important metabolizer or things that the floor does to the wine is that it consumes very important compounds in the wine, like alcohol, sugars, nutrients, dissolved oxygen or any oxygen above the surface, acetic acid, among other acids, and glycerin. So no wonder biological aging or biological sherries are so special, because if you have a wine that is getting stripped of all those elements, plus then the floor increases the levels of acetaldehydes in the wines. So if you get rid of this and increase this, the result is what you have in your glasses, right? So glycerin, just to name one of them, is the third most important element in palomino-based wines after water and alcohol. So if we're getting rid pretty much virtually of all the glycerin content in the wine, again, no wonder why the wine suffers such a transformation. It's very cool if you go to the region and you go and visit a winery and you are in front of a Fino Solera system, a Manzanilla Solera system, and you get to try the finished wine, which is typically the one in the Solera group of barrels, that group of barrels that is touching the ground. You will be tasting a wine very similar to the wine that you have in your glasses today, because typically that wine is then put in a bottle, okay? But when you try that Fino that has been there in the system for about 5 years, and you taste it and say, oh, this is delicious, it's very important to ask the winemaker to say, can I try now the sobretabla, the base wine that starts to be feeding the system from the top? So the fresh wine from the vintage, soon after you add that alcohol, bringing the level to 15%, and you'll notice the difference between the base wine that they use to start feeding the systems whenever they need more wine, and the final result, which is what you have in your glasses. So that transformation is very obvious when you can taste the original wine and the finished wine 5 years later. So I wanted to say that because it's a very unique thing. And back to the three wines. Yes, you can say Lucas, but I see a lot of things that are common in them. And yeah, because again, it's basically, as I was saying, the same base wine by Lustau that then is sent to the 3 different towns, but it's all biological sherry. It's all pretty much the same thing. And again, the grapes that produce those wines could be exactly the same grapes in the 3 across the 3 glasses. Okay. But yeah, being biological sherry, they all share like similar color, right? Maybe the manzanilla is a little bit paler, you could say, but what we're talking about, some pale lemon green or pale lemon here. They also share a similar intensity of aroma. Perhaps again, the manzanilla is very, aromatic now and very intense. But I think all 3 are pretty much under the same intensity, and all 3 are kind of like under the same rate of development, fully developed aromas, you could say. All 3 wines, as far as taste and then flavor, the connection between the palate and the nose, the back of your throat, they all have also things that are common across the 3, right? All 3 wines are yeasty, or bready, or doughy. They're all nutty with that fresh almond. They have that slight dry apple thing, or white fruit a little bit. Some people bruised apple, green apple. They're not too fruity though, because one of the things that the yeast does to the wine is to get rid of that fruitiness. And that's when you realize, when you taste again the sobretabla, the base wine, the original one, and then the Fino 5 years later. They're more floral or herbal. We'll talk about that, but they're all savory, right? They're all briny, almost salty. They all show certain bitterness at the end that makes them very, very elegant, very palatable. They're very dry, all 3 wines. They're pretty light-bodied. because biological aging, despite the fact that having 15% alcohol, that lack of glycerin, that lean character in the wines makes them very sharp and ultra dry, and not so full-bodied. They're pretty lively and sharp again, and not too acidic. We never talk about high acidity typically in sherry, because Palomino is not an acidic grape. This is not Chenin Blanc from the Loire. This is not Madeira. This is not Riesling from Germany. So typically the acidity is medium plus, but the lack of glycerin again and the crisp, extremely crisp palate makes them feel more acidic than they are, because they're extremely dry and sharp and lean. So I agree that all three wines kind of like show a lot of common traits, but we also like to expose our students to the effect of the location, back to the triangle again. And you guys tell me, but I don't think the three glasses show exactly the same nuances, profiles. So let's taste Manzanilla Papirusa, and you may agree with me that it's definitely more floral than some of the other two, with that chamomile thing. Chamomile is manzanilla in Spanish. So white flowers, a bit more biscuity perhaps, a little bit softer, very almondy, and then with something that people describe that is pretty unique to these biological wines aged in San Luca. Remember that town, and I'm gonna go back here to the map. We're now here, guys, Manzanilla Papirusa. So a lot of that ocean influence. So wine number one has something that people describe as a sea spray or sea breeze, that soft salinity that gives the wine a special character, that oyster shell, and then maybe a little bit lighter color, maybe a little bit lighter body. That's what a textbook manzanilla should taste like. So if we compare that to wine number two, which is Fino from El Puerto, down here now, you see, oh, very close to the water too. Yeah, very close to the water too. But as I said before, not exactly the same climatic conditions, the floor formations and all that. So to a lot of people, wines from El Puerto, and you guys tell me if you agree, have, yeah, an ocean presence here too, but not exactly the same as you taste out of glass number one. Here, experts believe that there's more like a deep ocean aroma and presence, no? There's a local term in Castilian to describe some of the aromas and profiles of the wines from El Puerto, not only finos, but also amontillados and olorosos, and so that they all share that aroma of bajamar. And bajamar means low tide. So when the ocean goes out here twice a day, and it does it very dramatically, and you're able to walk on that brand new beach, because the ocean now is, 500 meters away from the shore, that aroma of the wet stones and the seaweed and, the almost profound diesel-like kind of like, almost petrol and reduction and almost gunflame, but also oceany. That deep ocean aromas are classic here, with that seaweed again, and the Asian spices and things like that. So if you taste glass number one and glass number two, hopefully you see the small nuances that set them apart, even if they share another number of traits that are the same. And the same with something similar with Jarana. Now we are in Jerez. So let me complete the triangle here. So now we're here, right, with glass number three. So as you can see, inland, more continentality, away from the ocean, different wind influence here, hotter in the summer. So last number 3, Fino from Jarana, you guys tell me, but it's a wine that it doesn't have that ocean thing, that sea spray, or the seaweed that you find in number 2 is not here anymore. It's not so much floral, it's maybe a little more herbal, some like classic Mediterranean herbs, sage and rosemary, things like that, and then more citrus. So it's classic, the orange peel things that of that nature, and then the pungent character, the yeastiness. It's not actually the same as the other 2, and perhaps a little bit more body, a little more structure. Of course, very dry, nutty. That fresh almond is common across the 3, but then let me say perhaps number 3 is a bit more earthy than that ocean salinity you find in the other 2. So we think it's interesting to understand the effect of the location, particularly on biological wines, not so much in other styles that we'll taste in a few minutes, but for biological aging, the place where the wines are aged is interesting. And now that the region has opened up to the other 7 towns, we can wait to taste in the future, in 3, 5, 8 years, biological wines from the 10 towns, if possible, because then we'll see how those different nuances are making the region even more diverse and interesting. So that was the first exercise. Now, what would you eat with these first 3 wines? Well, a lot of things. We like to approach biological aging in Jerez as the white wines of the region. If we compare Jerez to any other wine region in the world, these are basically the white wines. They're definitely white, and they're typically served, they're usually lighter than other styles, and they're typically served chilled, sometimes colder than the other styles, and their lighter profile, the palate and everything suits many times foods that we enjoy at the beginning of the meal. Let's say we're going to create a culinary experience here with Jerez only. I used to work in a restaurant where we were serving about 30 courses out of a tasting menu, and sometimes we were pairing 30 courses with Jerez only, 30 courses. So, and we're not going to make it as complex today, but we're going to have a little culinary experience with, let's say, 4 or 5 waves of different dishes here, different ingredients, different foods. So let's start the meal pouring the manzanilla and the 2 finos, and maybe enjoying those appetizers and those things that we like to eat first. Don't you guys feel like oysters and glass number 1? Possibly, right? So shellfish, right? Any shellfish. Appetizers like, it doesn't have to be, and again, forget about Spanish cuisine. Of course, a lot of Spanish cuisine will be good with wines, but yeah, if you want to do some of the classic tapas, now it would be a good time. Of course, charcuterie. If you get some of the local jamón ibérico, it's going to be a home run, guaranteed. So any charcuterie will be great. Any pork with sherry is always great, and for any style. But again, any shellfish, any fish, like I don't know. I like that the flaky, soft and elegant fishes like hake or monkfish or things like that are beautiful out of the Mediterranean too. Even if you cook them very very, very subtly, like maybe you steamed it or just a soft plancha. But let's say you have a hake that is steamed, so very subtle. The wine is going to have an effect on the face, like pinching a little bit of salt. It's going to make the flavor of the fish pop. So very, very cool. Anything with vinegars, like salads, is usually no problem for these wines. They have a very low VA, and they handle the vinegar and the acidity very well. So any salads you may want to enjoy at the beginning of the meal, anything pickled. We love pickles so much here in the US. Usually great, wonderful combinations. And then soups, because soups are historic, great companions, or sherries are historic wines to go with soups. We have that turtle soup and amontillado in New Orleans, right? Louisiana. So yeah, historically soups are being paired with any type of sherry. Here maybe more of the cold summer soups, like the local gazpacho, ajo blancos, or maybe you like a vichyssoise, things like that. So typically great wines to go with soups. So yeah, a lot of things, because they're extremely versatile. My theory is that the lack of fruitiness, the yeastiness, the lean palate, the medium plus acidity makes them extremely fruit friendly. But if we're gonna do an entire meal with Jerez, I think it makes sense for us to start enjoying our dinner with the finos and manzanillas and serve that type of appetizer thing with them. So that will be the first wave of dishes that we send out here. Okay. All right, let's move on to wine number 4, which is that wine that when we teach the course, we say is the perfect dual aging wine. And Amontillado is a wine that is very special because it combines both aging methods. Wine number 5 is 100% oxidative wine. Wines 1, 2, and 3 are 100% biological wines. Wine 4, Amontillado Los Arcos, is actually sitting in the middle. Okay, so wine 4, this beautiful wine you have in that glass, is a wine that spends 4 years under the layer of yeast. 4 years under the layer of yeast, and once it's done, once it's become a Fino, that same wine is taken out of that system to feed another Solera system that will turn the wine into an Amontillado 4 years later. Why? Because when they take the Fino out of the first system, they increase the alcohol by another 2 percentage points, and that wine is now going to lose the floor yeast, and that Fino starts to be exposed to the oxygen. So just for everyone to understand, wine number 4 is made from wine number 3. All right. So when they finish wine number 3, they had 2 options: put it in a bottle and sell it as a Fino Jarana, but they also have the option to take a little bit of that Fino Jarana and start feeding the Solera system of Amontillado Los Arcos. And they do that by increasing the alcohol level to 2%, 2 percentage points. So they go up to 17% now, and that kills off the floor. So the same wine starts to, for another 4 years, is now aged in contact with oxygen. So Amontillado Los Arcos is what I call a perfect Amontillado, because it's 4 years under floor and then another 4 years in contact with oxygen, right? So it's like an older 3. Imagine you have a number 3 wine that you add more alcohol to it, the floor disappears, and 4 years later, the result is that glass number 4. So take a look at it. Look at the color. I mean, it's not number 3 anymore, right? This is that amber color now. But check out also the aromas, the spiciness, the oxidative notes, the nuttiness, that fresh almond that we had in 3 now is what, more like toasted hazelnut type of thing. The effect of the oxygen, right? The oxidation here. Alcohol a bit more prominent, of course. It's going to give us a little bit more of a round mouthfeel, a little more density. We still have that mandarin peel or citrus thing going on, and then a dry and savory finish, but with a palate that is not extremely full. It's not extremely, weighty or round, because it lost a lot of that glycerin. It was 3, it was light, it was lively, and didn't have enough time to turn that around and become a really full body wine. So it's a medium body sherry with a little bit of that origin. The traits of the floor is still present. So you should find some 3 in 4, because literally 4 is made from 3. No? What are you pairing with an Amontillado? A lot of things. Palo Cortado is another style that could be here, but could be also with the Olorosos, but we're not going to taste any Palo Cortado today. The Amontillado is probably the broadest category of sherry. Everyone produces 3 or 4 different Amontillados of different ages and profiles. Some of them are closer to a Fino, some of them are closer to an Oloroso. Again, it kind of sits in the middle. And because of that, is an extremely versatile wine out of Jerez. You cover a lot of ground here. And that translates also to the table when we choose a variety of food to go with these Amontillados, with this particular style. If you have an Amontillado that is closer to a Fino, you could be enjoying foods that are suited to go with the wines that we tasted before, with the first 3 glasses. If you taste an Amontillado that is, rounder or bigger or more oxidized, you could be enjoying foods that are going to be foods that could also go with an Oloroso, which is wine number 5. So we cover a lot of ground here. And that translates into a lot of different options. But if we approach glasses 1, 2, 3 as the white wines of the region, let's imagine now we're using an Amontillado as our rosé option. So now we're gonna serve a second wave of courses. And we're going to join Amontillado with that, because Amontillados are great with anything with mushrooms. Now, maybe it's time to enjoy some dishes with mushrooms. Wonderful. Amontillados are great with anything smoked. If you like smoked fish or smoked meat, it's going to be a fantastic experience. Amontillados are awesome with vegetables. It's time for us to enjoy some vegetables maybe now. And particularly those vegetables that are tricky with other wines, like asparagus or artichokes or Brussels sprouts. And if you roast them or you deep fry them, are really fantastic. Deep fry artichokes and Amontillado, if you haven't tried that, put it on the list, because it's a must try. So vegetables, mushrooms, smoked stuff. We can start introducing some protein too, like lighter, like, I don't know, wild fowl or wild poultry, things like that. Hard cheeses, if you start craving for some cheese, and things like, I don't know, I think carpaccios are good examples. Carpaccio, veal carpaccio, gamba carpaccio, some protein, but light, it's wonderful. And again, if it's an amontillado that is ultra sharp, and you enjoyed an oyster with glass number 1, right? Oysters and amontillados, if it's maybe a funky oyster from a different water, it could be also a great option. That's why that breaching effect is very important here. Amontillado is that ideal wine to breach between courses, and you can go back and forth with amontillados and be safe most of the time. They really are very versatile wines because of the amounts of profiles that you can find coming out of the region, and they're actually food affinity. They have extremely food affinity, and the combination of both aging methods is a big asset here. Okay, so let's jump onto glass number 5. And yes, be aware or know that I have both glasses 5 and 6 here. Don't taste the PX yet, please. As I said at the beginning, don't do that. Let's concentrate on glass number 5. But both wines are 100% oxidative. Glasses 1, 2, and 3 are 100% biological. Glass 4 is a combination of biological and oxidative. Glass 5 is what we call a dry oxidative style, but any sweet wine is also oxidative because there is no flor, there is no biological aging. Flor doesn't like so much amount of sugar, so the PX or any sweet style of Jerez is typically an oxidative wine. But let's go to taste glass number 5 now. Yeah. And Oloroso is the great example of 100% dry oxidative sherry. Why? Well, it starts at the beginning. It could start on the vineyard. Some vineyards are more, famous for producing great finos or manzanillas. Some vineyards are famous for producing olorosos styles. So it could start on the vineyard, but typically what happens here, at least lastly, in the few decades in the past, is that olorosos are determined by the amount of pressure that you apply to the grapes and the amount of time that those grapes remain in contact with the skins and all the solid elements. So typically these are wines that are produced from second press. Okay, Fino means fine. So glasses 1, 2, and 3, which are 3 finos and manzanillas. Manzanilla and fino is the same. The only difference is that manzanilla is from Sanlúcar, that particular town, but it's exactly the same production. So the first 3 finos are the finest wines. So those wines are produced typically from free-run juice, very delicate based wines. Here we start off with a fuller, more coarser texture, more phenolic content based wine, right? Which could be fatal for the flor yeast. If you have too much phenolic content, maybe some solid parts because of the longest periods of time in contact with all the solid parts in the grapes, in the bunches, you could compromise the flor. So these are oloroso-based wines, or based wines to produce olorosos, are considered the perfect wines to make an oxidative dry sherry style. So what they do is they bring the alcohol up to 17% at the beginning. As soon as they produce them, they fortify them to 70% alcohol, and that prevents any flor formation. So wine number 5 is a wine that not only shows fuller body characteristics, it's also wine that is from day one exposed to the oxygen in the Solera systems. In this case, 12 years. Oloroso de Nuño is 12 years of average age. So you have a wine at 17% alcohol that starts to concentrate. Because as you can see here, it's not 17 alcohol % anymore. It's 20 now. and they didn't add any more alcohol. It's all by concentration. So olorosos are the perfect example of those wines that are tremendously intense and tremendously concentrated and really full body wines. So look at the color, a little bit darker than 4, right? But then oloroso means, I don't know, highly aromatic in some old Castilian. So look at the complexity, the intensity on the nose, the wood, the spices, even that nuttiness that keeps evolving. We had fresh almond, then we had toasted hazelnut. What now is what, like walnut or roasted chestnut, things like that. Very complex. The bitter chocolate, tobacco, leather. Some people find some soy sauce sometimes, things like that. And then especially the mouth, the palate, the weight here, the roundness, the body, the richness. Remember, we don't have floor yeast, so we not only keep all the glycerin in the wine, we see that increasing by concentration. So glasses 1, 2, and 3 had less than 1 gram per liter of glycerin. Glass 5 shows more than 10 grams per liter of glycerin. So basically the opposite. And that amount of glycerin, which is that compound in alcohol that makes the wines rounder and bigger, is extremely high here. So the weight, the power, the roundness again is very noticeable. High volatile acidity too, that gives the wine that beautiful lift on the aroma, and then a lot of dry extract concentration here that adds structure and heaviness. And again, a savory finish, a dry and savory finish that makes olorosos the perfect wines to go with your favorite savory entrées. So if glasses 1, 2, and 3 were our white wines, glass 4 is our rosé, glass 5 is our red wine. So you don't need, whenever you feel like eating something that you would enjoy with a red wine, you can reach out for a bottle of oloroso, and it will be awesome with a lot of those dishes that now, after the first wave, the second wave, now we're gonna have a third wave of courses, but now we're super hungry and we need like real food here. So cheese again, if you like cheese across the board, no problem, but maybe it's time for some meat. And it could be a ribeye, but it could be, I don't know, I really enjoy them with stews. Anything that you cook slowly, anything savory that you eat with a spoon, those stews, and I don't know, things like maybe with beans as well, are classic. Anything with gelatin, like oxtail, beef cheeks, things like that are absolutely wonderful. But you say, oh, Lucas, I want to go even farther out. I like big game dishes. I like wild boar, I like venison. No problem. Anything you throw this wine is going to take it. Even in spicy food, believe it or not. But you say, wait, Lucas, hold on, 20% alcohol. Are you serious? Yes, I know. Bring the temperature down and little sips, but the amount of glycerin coating your palate is going to help you with very spicy foods too. Amontillado is wine number 4 is going to make you burn like you're in hell. But olorosos, because of the amount of glycerin, actually tame down a little bit that heat, believe it or not. And then of course, things like tuna, no, blue fish, like red. This is the best tuna in the world. It's caught here out of these waters. You can ask all the Japanese people who come and buy it. Bluefin, of course. So tuna tartare, beef tartare, things like that, amazing. And we were talking about soups, no? And I forgot to mention a soup with amontillado. Have you tried amontillado glass number 4 and French onion soup? Incredible. With glass number 5, if we have to keep talking about soups, one of my favorite pairings, and if you haven't tried, I encourage you to do it and let me know what you think. Japanese pork ramen and olorosos, absolutely unbelievable. Wow. So another option there. So again, a lot of things, a lot of ingredients, a lot of dishes, but why not those dishes that are gonna make us very satisfied because we're almost finished, we're done with the savory part of the meal. Huh? So we started with the appetizers and all that, we transitioned with the amontillado, and then we finished the savory experience with the olorosos. Huh? All right, let's complete the day with glass number 6. Now you can taste it, put it in your mouth, and if you go back and taste glass number 1, it's gonna taste like shit. I mean, it's gonna be horrible. That's why I didn't want you to try 6 first. You don't want to go back that way after you taste something like a Pedro Ximenez. That's why the transition is typically like that. No, we do finos, very dry finos and manzanillas, amontillados, olorosos. We could have some blends before we do a Pedro Ximenez, but again, we could only send you 6 bottles this time. So I don't know if you know how Pedro Ximenez are made in Jerez, but it's basically what you see here. They lay out the grapes of Pedro Ximenez variety outdoors in the sun for about 2 weeks until they become raisins. So, yes, they become raisins. They lose their water content about 50%, and they just shrivel like a raisin. So what you're tasting here is a raisin wine. They collect the raisins and then they put them in a vertical press. They squeeze the hell out of that. It's extremely syrupy and concentrated grape must. The fermentation is very unsuccessful, to say the least, you know, because there's so much sugar. And then they add alcohol, they fortify those, and then they age them in solar systems like any other sherry. In this case, another 12 years in a solar system. Yeah. So what you have in front of you out of glass number 6 is probably the darkest and sweetest wine that you've tried, not in your life, but for sure this week. If you go back to 1, and if you hold 1 in one hand and hold 6 in the other hand, don't tell me those are not the 2 ends of the spectrum of the universe of wine. We have the driest and palest on one hand, and we have the darkest and sweetest on the other. And we could have another 15 glasses in between, as I said, we said before, right? So that gives you the extremely diversity and endless possibilities for food pairing. Now, well, let's taste 6. Look at the color, and this is a baby. A 12-year-old Pedro Ximenez is a baby. When you go to the region and you're able to try a 30-year, 50-year, 100-year-old Pedro Ximenez out of a cask, then you understand the potential here. A 100-year-old Pedro Ximenez is like, it's like motor oil. It looks and tastes like motor oil, delicious motor oil. But when these wines are aged in cask for prolonged periods of time, like 50, 100 years, they become black. They become ultra complex. But they also become more balanced. The sugar's caramelized, and they're absolutely delicious wines. 12 years is going to be less dark and more like sweeter, almost sugary. There's a lot of sweetness here. But yeah, look at the color, look at the density, look at the weight in the glass, the intensity of aroma, but especially the texture. This is like, it's like heavy cream or like cough syrup. Some people say this is like cough syrup. Yeah, the texture is incredible. And then what, of course, this is a raisin wine. So honey, dried figs, raisins, dried fruits, I don't know, caramels, licorice, coffee, all those things. And more than 400 grams of sugar per liter. So perhaps you don't want to drink too much of this. And then you say, look, what are we going to do with this? Well, maybe you don't need to do anything. Maybe this is your liquid dessert, right? Maybe you just complete your sherry experience with a glass of chilled Pedro Ximenez and call it a day, right? But if you're still hungry and you still have for some more savory food, it may sound a little extreme, but things like foie gras could be interesting. Maybe with other blends, not so concentrated like this Pedro Ximenez. But cheese, if you like blue cheese, that's another must try. So if you're still hungry for some savory or salty stuff, salty blue cheese and Pedro Ximenez is really fantastic. Chocolate works. I prefer vintage pour with chocolate. That's my personal opinion, but it works. Ice cream is another must-have. The play on the texture between a nice Italian style, egg-based ice cream and Pedro Ximenez is incredible. Some people even pour the wine over a cup of ice cream. In Spain, the classic is vanilla. We have a lot of options here in the US, but vanilla-based, I don't know, macadamia thing, caramel, really incredible. So ice cream and Pedro Ximenez is another good one. Fruit cakes, things like that. I prefer moscateles, and Jerez produces fantastic moscateles, as I'll explain in a minute. But classic apple pie, like, I don't know, the classic Spanish apple pie, really works too with PX. So yeah, if you are for a lot of sugar and sweetness, we can also pair that type of food with sherry. And if this doesn't give you that sense of diversity, let me briefly tell you a little bit about the wines that we haven't tried today that are also produced in the region. Palo cortados, a style of oloroso but with a lot of finesse, beautiful wines. If you haven't tried one ever, I would encourage you to do so. We haven't tried any blends. And I always explain this. This is pretty shameful that we don't send you, when we do the course or a tasting like this, that we don't send you a blend. Because a blend, or the blends, and cream, you have pale cream, medium, and then creams, but especially creams. All those blends still account for more than, they say, after the pandemic is back to about 55% of all global sales of sherry. So blends are very important for Jerez. Particularly important in Northern European countries like UK, but also in the US. The reason why a lot of people think that Jerez is that dark wine, sweet wine that I enjoy once a year around holiday times, but they're very important. And it's typically a combination of any dry wine that we've tried before with usually smaller amounts of Pedro Ximenez. So after we're done today, if you take another glass, a seven glass, fresh glass, and you add, let's say 80% of number 5, and 20% of number 6, you will be making a homemade cream, more or less. So another universe of sweeter sherries that are between the dry styles and the sweet varietal styles. So that increases the amount of possibilities that we have here. We haven't tried any blend. We haven't tried any Moscatel. I was telling you about the great muscats that are produced in Jerez that are great with sweet wines, of course, late harvest, and then aged in solera systems for potential long periods of time as well. Combining the Moscatel, the Muscat fragrancy and grapey character and all that with the edge of the sherry region, the combination of the oxidation and the long periods in cask. So wonderful dessert wines from that particular grape variety, an ancient, as you know, ancient Mediterranean grape variety. We haven't tried any today. We haven't tried any wine en rama. You guys know what an en rama Jerez is? Very trendy for the last, let's say, 15 plus years now. Unfiltered, basically. More associated with biological styles, with finos and manzanillas that are just put in bottles straight out of the cask. With, let's say, think of like a cheesecloth just to get rid of some of the particles, but nothing else, no treatments, nothing is allowed. No fining, no cold stabilization, nothing. So if you haven't tried any biological en rama sherry, I would definitely recommend to try to purchase some and enjoy, because they're incredible. Now, what you see on the front label here, everyone see the cursor here, 2020. That's not the vintage. These are not vintage wines. Remember, sherry is 99 plus 9% solera average age. So 2020 in this case is when the wine was put, is the release year when the wine was put in the bottle. So en ramas usually bear that date there, that year, because you can maybe find en ramas now in the market that are 2020, 2021, 2022, typically very small releases, very limited production. So they don't last too long, but they want you to know when the wine was put in the bottle, because the fresher it is, that now will be in the US, we're about to get the 2023s in, right? That were put in bottle in spring. So if you try a 2023 now, Fino Jarana, it's a very similar thing as we've done today with glasses 1, 2, and 3. Actually, Lustau bottles the 3 wines. They do a selection of barrels, and they put them in bottles and filter it. So if you try, let's say, Fino Jarana and Rama 2023, it's going to be, for you, it's going to be the closest experience to try the wine out of the cask next to the winemaker right there. And that's something that they want you to experience. That doesn't mean that the wine cannot be like cellar, put away and enjoy it 3, 5, 10 years later. But the younger it is, the closer to that experience of enjoying the wine out of the cask, obviously, in the region. So we haven't tried any of that. We haven't tried any of the very special, ultra limited wines like the Almacenista line by Lustau, or like the very, again, limited productions, Imperatriz Eugenia. We haven't tried any of the older sherries. We have 5, 8, 12 years that in cask, right, in front of us. That's nothing. There's a good amount of 20, 30, 50, and 100-year-old wines out of the region. If you think that glass number 5 is a very intense wine, I 100% agree with you. But that's a 12-year-old Oloroso. Wait to taste VORS, which is minimum 30 years in cask oloroso. If you're all about intensity, all sherry guarantees you that. So you're going to be happy. Huh? Those 30 or 50-year-old olorosos, you just need a few drops and you're going to have the wine with you for hours on end. So yeah, we go back to the spectrum, all the, all the ground that we covered here, all the different styles. I always say the same. If there is one region that produces the ultimate food wines, that's Jerez. It must be Jerez, because of the nature of the wines, the difference between the two ends, and everything else that we can find. So I hope you agree with me, but guys, anything you want to enjoy during the week, any of your favorite ingredients, I'm sure you're going to find one Jerez that is going to go with that. So I challenge you in a positive way to find an ingredient that you don't like with the wines from, at least one style of wines from sherry.
Lucas, thank you very much. I got to say this. I'll never forget when I took the first sherry class from you, and I keep telling you this is the thing I learned is what food goes with sherry? Everything. You just have to know the range of sherries to know which sherry goes with which food. And you did a beautiful job tonight. My wife and I were sitting here having a very creamy vanilla ice cream and a chocolate, dark chocolate with it. And we tried the Oloroso with the Pedro Ximenez, like you said. It was phenomenal. But I got to tell you, your presentation tonight was like the Pedro Ximenez. It was sweet. It was beautiful. It was fantastic. And I appreciate that. For everybody, thank you very much for doing it. At this point in time, I'm going to go through the chats. There were some, the director of education said an excellent tasting. Thanks for making this happen, and this will be posted online. As I said at the beginning, I am recording this. I'm trying to find some other comments here. Vince said he was also solo along with Henry. You two should get together. Of course, I think Henry's out on the West Coast and Vince is in St. Louis. But I wish some people were here because we had our dinner tonight with this. We had our shrimp at the beginning. We had the grilled meat and some turkey. Let me see what other questions I have here. And if anybody's got anything, please feel free to jump in. Another comment. This is great and very informative. Let me see. Does anybody? Let me put it this way. Most of them were comments about this is fantastic and they loved it. Does anybody have any questions? You can go ahead and unmute yourself and talk. I think Lorraine, did you have something?
Well, what we have is plaudits for our host. We have learned so much. We had all 6 of the wines. I researched a great deal about the food, and I'm happy to say that much of what he suggested, we actually just consumed. I've been taking notes. We actually intend to have our chapter will be presenting these same wines this fall, and we do food pairings at all of our chapter meetings. And so we learned a lot tonight, and I've been taking notes, and I thank you so much because you just helped me to do our meeting in the fall.
And please don't hesitate to reach out. Bill has my email if you want to share.
And I may too, because my husband and I are spending 2 weeks in Barcelona in September.
Oh, that's my hometown.
That's your hometown.
Born and raised.
Born and raised. Well, I may reach out to you for that too. But yeah, I may take the course from you to be certified in sherry, because I'd like to be better informed when we go. Okay. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate
it. And just Lorraine, I just got to say something here. You can still sign up for the course that we're offering with the American Wine Society. the certification, and we got a big discount on it. I think it was at 25%. But in the email that you've got the notice for this,
Yep.
the part is two part, 2 evenings, one on 31 July. And the other one is in August. I think it's the 4th of August. And they start at 7 o'clock. And it's, if you want to get the certification, do it through that one, because I want to make sure that we have a lot of people attending that with Lucas. Lucas, we had about 25 people online. Lorraine, thank you so much for your comments. And I think what Lucas is offering is if depending upon how many people in your chapter there are, he might be willing to do this class for your chapter. But we have recorded this, and you can play this at the chapter meeting and pause it or whatever you want to do. I'm going to try to put it online. But Lucas, I have another comment for you from my end, and that was, my wife was born in Barcelona. So she really appreciated all this stuff, because a lot of these foods we had tonight were deja vu for her.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions for Lucas? If you do, please go ahead and ask them now. I think we've got it, but Lorraine, thank you for your comments. It echoed what I'm seeing on what I'm reading through everything, all these comments about everybody really enjoyed themselves. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I'm going to I call on Henry in about 5 seconds here, because he's always very articulate and knows how to say things, and he might say something that I missed. Henry, go ahead.
No, I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. I'm actually in culinary school training, and in 2024 and 2025, I've got accepted to a couple Paris culinary schools. I'll be moving to Paris for a few years.
Oh.
And one interesting thing is I found a local community college that's doing a wine and food pairing in the fall. So I will bring this up. This might be one of the classes as well. And it was just, it just kind of was a great overview of these particular wines. And I studied this many years ago in college, the whole Solera system. And and it was really well curated, from the lighter wines to the PX. So I just think you did a fantastic job on it.
Yes.
And I will be taking the sherry course.
Thank you,
Sounds
Henry.
great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So one other thing here, Lucas, is I think we had about 25 people on the call, plus or minus. I know we were probably hoping to get some more than that, but I think that's a good number. And I hope it sounds like a few more people are going to sign up for the course. And we're going to put out a note tomorrow or this week about ways to sign up, because it's a great deal you all got us, which is like I said, it's about that. I think it's 25% off from what it's normally offered for in the US, that you're giving just to the American Wine Society, but they got to take it these dates. If they don't take it the 31st and the 4th of August, they're going to have to pay that extra money. So thank you very much for doing that. Does anybody else have any questions or comments or anything? I'm going to check the chat box here, see if anything else has come in. I want to thank both Lorraine and Henry for your kind words. And I got have one thing here. Will this be posted online? It is recorded, and I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be very popular, because, like I said, people can play it at the chapters if we can't get you to speak at chapters, Lucas.
Let me need any more information.
Yeah. Lucas, do you want to say any concluding comments other than, I'm going to say this from my end. We love Pedro Ximenez, and I think everybody loved the presentation you gave tonight, Lucas. Do you have anything you want to say?
Quick.
No.
Lucas?
Yes.
Hi, this is Willis Parker. Unfortunately, new computer. I didn't know how to turn my picture on. I have but one thing to say. I am so happy that I got to taste the wines with you, because for the past, I would say 12 years, every time I'm in Jerez, I can never get into Lustau to try the wines. So it's wonderful to finally.
Let's change that. I mean, if you plan to go back, please let's make it happen. we would love to welcome you there.
Okay, yeah, I always end up at a couple of the other places in town. And since you're being so wonderful, I'm not gonna name them, but love sherries. Love sherries and the tapas sherry combinations of Spain. Like I said, I went to Spain every year for about 12 years, but health has slowed me down a little bit.
Bill, feel free to share my contact information with everyone.
Okay.
I sure will.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I'll just say that yeah, we just believe what we say, because we've tried a lot of food with these wines, and it's, if you like the wines by themselves, and a lot of people do, and they just sip on them, that's fine, and you can make beautiful cocktails with them too. They're awesome cocktails ingredients. But when I think the wines really shine is when you put them on the table with your favorite ingredients. And again, everyone like tends to cook some Spanish flavors those days, or whenever but again, any Japanese food and sherry is incredible. A cheeseburger and an oloroso is fantastic. Pizza and amontillado is amazing. Italian food, French, whatever. Just keep your mind open, and if you, as I hope, if you understand when and how to utilize the different styles, you're guaranteed you're going to enjoy like a big deal.
Now, I'm not 100% sure if you can, we're in Ohio, and Ohio is a strange state. How readily available are the Lustau wines at the distributors in Ohio?
So we did some research on that, and what was the name of there was the one distributed on the East Coast, and the West Coast was, I forget the name of it, but they
No,
could send to Ohio.
Bill,
No, but that's good.
That's for the mixed case. But if you're looking for Lustau wines, Ohio should have great distribution. I can do some research and give you a couple of maybe local wine stores. What city in Ohio?
Anywhere between Dayton, Springfield, and Columbus.
Okay, we can work on that and let you know some good wine stores. But Lustau should be well distributed in the state.
I will check it out tomorrow.
Let me know.
Email you so you can pass it.
Okay.
I find
All right.
out in Ohio, so you
We'll find some wine. We'll find some wine for you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And well, I just got one other thing here. I'm sitting here looking at the cocktail things you talked about, and I saw East India Manhattan. And Lucas, I think if you didn't mention something about East India sherry, I think I'd get in trouble if I didn't have you mention something at the end about that one.
Well, Lustau is East India?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a very popular wine. I think it's number 2 in the US as far as sales. A lot of bartenders and aficionados and connoisseurs know the wine. It's a type of cream. It's a blend, but it's a little more fancy style of cream. It's a combination of Oloroso and Pedro Ximenez, high quality Oloroso and Pedro Ximenez, about that rate, 80-20, 15-85, depending on the final amount of sweetness, but typically around 115 grams of sugar per liter. But the thing with East India is that they first age both wines separately, the Pedro Ximenez for 12 years, and then the Oloroso for 12 years. Then they blend them at that rate, and then they further age the wine, now the blended wine, in a separate room for another 3 years. But it's a very special room within the aging complex that shows a certain type of average temperature and humidity that kind of like resembles the conditions that the sherries were experiencing or in when the wines were shipped across the oceans. Higher humidity, you know, a little bit higher temperature compared to the rest of the facility. And it tells you that that particular wine is going to have that taste of the old sherries when they were shipped to the Indias, the East India. So it's a beautiful story and a delicious wine. And listen, it's inexpensive. Because I'll wrap it up like this, okay? I'll say, if sherry were French, we would be breaking the bank here week after week. But these are the most underrated wines in the world, and it's not me. All experts agree on that. So we're truly lucky people that we can enjoy this quality, this complexity, this diversity at these prices. And I know, you know, everyone has their own, you know, budget, but wine is comparison. If you compare sherry to other regions, dollar to dollar, you get a lot out of those bottles. So just let's buy more sherry and enjoy it.
Well, on that note, I think if there's no more questions, I see people clapping their hands. I think we're all doing that, virtual claps. Very good. Thank you very much for everything, Lucas. Everybody, thank you for joining us, and thank you for your kind words to Lucas. I'm glad everybody enjoyed themselves, and I hope you all, we see you all on the certification program. I'm taking it. I'm glad to hear some other people are taking it. And you know, we're going to have some other president pairing events coming up. I think at the end of August, we're going to have one again with Tony Lawrence. So I hope to see you all on those events as well. At last, again, Lucas, thank you so much. It was a
Have a good night.
fantastic presentation.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night, everybody. Take care.